Hi everyone, welcome back to Journey into Ayurveda. Thank you for joining us in episode 10. Last episode, we had a conversation with our classmates, with Pilar joining us to share her journey into Ayurveda, and she talked about her background being medical doctor. Today, we are bringing Ayurveda fact versus fiction. We want to discuss more common fad trends and think through each of them from an Ayurvedic lens. This time we are talking about meal prepping. So, Kate, what do you think? Do you want to start us with internalization?
Yes, definitely. I'm super pumped about this one. Like the research side that I did on it was like fascinating. So I can't wait to get into this. So for an internalization, I thought we could I'll just do a chant to Ganesh. This is one we've done, but it's been a while. Maybe this was like the first one that I did. So Ganesh, AKA, is the remover of obstacles. So we can think about that in terms of like, before you listen to this podcast, like any barriers that you may have to receiving the information, may those be lifted. If you think about like having a little Ganesh statue, like coming into your home, it's like you're removing any obstacles as you enter into your home space. You're going to do a yoga practice, like any number of ways that Ganesh can be useful. So let's find a nice, comfortable position, either seated or standing, or maybe you're laid down when you listen to these. That's fine too. You can rest your eyes closed, or maybe just a gaze down towards your nose. Take a breath in and a breath out. Om Gam Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Gam Ganapataye Namaha. May any obstacles, any barriers to our learning, to our ability to be opened and receptive, be removed. May we let them go. And take a breath in and a breath out. How you feeling, Ashwini?
Wonderful. This was such a nice surprise because a couple of days ago there was Ganesh Chaturthi, where we celebrate Ganesh, and it's a big festival in India. So this is also on brand with that.
Oh, perfect. I love it. And we were just talking about how I need to let some things go. So it tied into that.
Yes. So, Kate, let's start discussing about meal prep. What do you think meal prep is? What is the definition of meal prepping?
Yeah, totally. So meal prepping, it can be a couple of different things. It's like either fully prepped meals, semi-cooked meals, or fully cooked meals that are like delivered, or it's something that you're doing yourself on your own. And so you can either do, I just watched some Instagram videos or reels about people doing it. So you like get all of the things together on Sunday and you like do it all for the week. Or you do like a meal prep service. But either way, you're relying on storing the meals in either like your fridge or your freezer. And then not always the case, but you're often then relying on your microwave to reheat the food. And like, I really like looking up the different, like the history or like where this came from. So there's like, this is really thorough research on my part. So the history of meal prepping, it either comes from like World War One, but there wasn't anything like additional about why it came from World War One. But then there was also a reference to Dutch schools that was really looking at like the convenience of meal prepping. And this was back in like 1910, 1920 kind of time. So long time ago that the idea of like really prepping for meals, and specifically in the school case, like prepping meals for a large number of people. But what I find is really interesting is that meal prep became a lot more popular after the invention of the microwave, which was in the 1950s. So with the microwave, that also then shifted grocery stores and what it was that grocery stores started selling. And they started selling more prepackaged ingredients for meals. It's marketed to be this like really convenient thing. It's now this staple. Like I have been in very few kitchens that have not had microwaves, and I've traveled extensively. Like hotels have microwaves, like they're everywhere. Um, and then in the 90s, I think is when like meal prep became like a thing for like the fitness community, and either a means of like supporting weight loss or building muscle or, like trying to achieve like some kind of aesthetic with your body. So thinking of meal prep in that context of like the fitness community, it was really meant of like managing or optimizing or maximizing, however you want to look at it, macronutrients. And then I think, one of the other main attractions of meal prep, or one of the illusions, I'll say, is that our lives are just so completely busy that it's not at all reasonable or possible to think that we can cook 3 meals a day that are fresh for ourselves or for our families, despite the fact that we have a really sedentary lifestyle now. So I think the overall intention though with meal prepping is that trying to make healthier foods a real option for people that either literally are too busy or just have the perception that they're too busy to prep a full meal. Ashwini, like, do you have experience with meal prep, or like, have you tried it at all?
It's so pit of Kate, like researching everything. I really like it. I love that
I
you
love
research
researching.
everything. I love that. Yes, meal prep in general. I never did meal prepping. I always had this aversion of food for like a day or two old. Not sure where that comes from. Sometimes I have prepared a meal like a night before and ate it in the morning. That's the extension of my meal prepping experience I have. I was doing that because I have to leave for work like 5 a.m. in the morning. So that's when I did it. I never got used to meal prepping because when I was growing up, my mom cooked like freshly prepared everything for every single day. There was no question about that. Maybe as an adult now, I understand how hard it is to do that. It's like nearly impossible to cook that good. My main concerns I have with meal prep is um how to handle cooked food. um One way I manage my meal prepping is I write down all my meals for the whole week, and the biggest challenge I have with meals preparing meals is like deciding what to cook. So I want to take care of that before in hand, so that like the most the that part is taken care of. Another thing I do is like a lot of soaking um of grains, nuts, figs, dates, all those things overnight. That makes cooking a little bit easier for me. I do use pressure cooker, even though it's not completely Ayurvedic, but it still saves me a lot of time, and that makes me cook every day. So that's worth it, completely worth it for me. It's basically finding balance based on how much time I have. If sometimes I have more time, I start doing some tortillas, rotis, all those things. Sometimes I don't have any time, so that day just pressure cook some rice and lentils and just eat it and go. That's all I can do for that day. Today was one of those days. I just cooked rice and lentils and that was it. And some tips I think I have for meal prep is use freezer to keep your meals. If you want to keep it more than one day, if you have to, don't heat and put it back in the fridge or freezer. And also try avoiding microwaving the food as well. These are the tips and these are the experience I have with meal prepping. What about you, Kate? What's your experience on meal prep?
Yeah. It's interesting we're talking about like growing up, because like my mom cooked. I mean, I remember eating like cereal for breakfast, and like on weekends we would have like special breakfasts and stuff. But I think, and then lunches were almost always like sandwiches that were packed in my little, like, they weren't Lunchables, but they were like, my mom tried to make them like little Lunchables. And then we always had fresh dinners though. I don't remember having like leftovers, like extensive leftovers or anything like that. So it's just interesting thinking about like how things have shifted or my perception of how they have shifted just from, when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I've tried meal prep services before. So I used Purple Carrot. And I don't know if they had both of these options when I was doing this, because this was, some years ago in like 2015. This was the time that I was vegan. So we've talked about this before, that I like could not figure out like a variety of things to eat. Like I was just like really like struggling and trying to figure out good meals for myself. So I did Purple Carrot. They like sent you the one that I did. They sent ingredients for the meals for the week, and I would do like 3 meals a week or something like that. And then it was very specific. So if I needed, the recipe called for like 2 green onions, there's 2 green onions in the box. And then it was like, I didn't have to go shopping for anything. It was just like all right there. And then you kind of, you cook it when you're ready to eat it. And then I've used My Fit Foods. More recently, this one was already cooked foods that came like in their own individual plastic. It's another thing, plastic containers that you reheated. And I'm confident that I reheated those in the microwave. This was like post COVID for me, like right after I got my sense of smell and taste back. So I couldn't smell or taste for 6 months after I had COVID, which made it really hard to eat. And I already didn't have like a lot of appetite. Like my digestion was really slow. So I did it for like, I need to eat something, and this is already going to be prepped for me and all of that kind of stuff. So I tried both of those. And then I don't know that I've ever really tried to like plan my meals out. I have like staple food items. I have like the grains. I have the meats that I like to eat. I try to eat the seasonal veggies. And then within that, I kind of just try to like mix it up a little bit. So I'm not using the same spices every day, or I don't eat the same vegetables with the same grains, but I don't, this is maybe very not pitta of me, but this is the Vata maybe coming out, where I'm just like, oh, like figure it out. And like, I rarely follow recipes. So I just like kind of throw things together. And then if I find something that I really like, then I replicate that and we'll keep that going. But I also want to say that like, I'm in a very different situation now than I was even last year, where I have the luxury of not having to work a 9 to 5. I kind of, set my own schedule. I kind of do what I need to do with that. So it's a lot easier, honestly, for me and it's typically me and my partner that are cooking together. So it's easy to like prep those meals and to go. It'd be very different if I was working full time, if I had kids, or if there were other people that I was living with, all of those things. So I want to be like transparent that this is a lot of work to like freshly cook your meals. But just some other things to think about with that. So with all of that, Ashwini, like let's dive into the Ayurvedic perspective. What is the Ayurvedic take on meal prep?
Yes, there is no Ayurvedic shloka about talking about meal prep. Meal prepasya na kuruvantu. That's my broken Sanskrit. Don't do meal prep. But no, it's a new concept. But the root text already talks about old versus new, the concept of prana in general. So, what is prana? Prana is a force in the food that is supporting your life, what you eat, and the force is given to you. The life is given to you because of the food. A simple example is when you eat an apple, you don't become an apple. The apple becomes you. So we all experience prana, but Ayurveda is just giving us the vocabulary to describe what we already know. For example, everybody loves freshly prepared food, but it's not as good for like tomorrow, day after tomorrow, day after tomorrow. You will find it not that interesting anymore. So what's happening? It is losing its prana day by day. Technically, the carbohydrate, proteins, fats, vitamins in the food may be the same. It doesn't change that much. But as food gets older, the food does not give you the same vitality and energy. In fact, in some cases, you might notice the energy goes down when you get tired of eating the same food. That's also losing from prana from your body, which is exact opposite of the desired effect that we want to do. Meals we eat, which is full of prana, will help you have more concentration, energy, health in general. I would suggest thinking of meal prep as like writing out the plan for what you want to cook for the whole week, soaking out grains, vegetables. You can cut the vegetables. It's not it even though if it's not Ayurvedically 100% okay, but cutting the vegetables day before and then using it for the next day is also fine if you're a busy person. These are some of the ideas you do have to work with you and your family. It always depends on who you are and your personal situation. Like Kate was saying, we both have partners and we don't have kids, so we have that liberty that we can cook our freshly prepared meals. If you're a single mother, if you have to run around and do a lot of things, do what's best for your family. If you're like a 9 to 5 person and you don't have to do anything after work and you have time, then try thinking of cooking your meal every day. Otherwise it's always depends on you. The simple Ayurvedic answer is always it depends on who you are, what you works for you, and everything else.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so interesting because I think I was just gonna say it like really depends on the person and your situation. And if it's reasonable for you to just cook one fresh meal a day, perfect. And I like your example of how you meal prep, and that means for you that you're going to soak the grains and soak the nuts so that they're ready for the next day. I've done the thing where I like cut the veggies and then I cook them the next day. I think that's okay too to do that. And then I liked that you brought up prana because I have that down too of like, you know, yoga teachers will talk about like your breath is the same as prana, but I thought your example of the apple is such a good one because it's much more subtle and like not that our breath isn't powerful, but prana is very powerful. It's like the consciousness that we bring in that sustains us. So, like, yes, our breath sustains us and there's like magic to our breath, but it's so much more than that. It's like breathing in the consciousness. And then our body literally transforms those elements, the elemental composition of the apple, into the apple that like helps our bodies, which is so cool, so powerful. Um, so, you know, when we're eating foods that are full of prana, like you talked about, that are full of the earth and the community and the prana all around us, we're taking that in. It's like so much more nutritious and valuable and wonderful. And then I also think, I don't know that we've talked about this on the podcast, but about our view of nutrition in the West is like very much focused on caloric intake and honestly convenience. And so, you know, wanting to like eat because you're trying to hit a specific caloric, you know, value so that you can do whatever you want to do with that caloric value. Versus, you know, in Ayurveda, it's really understanding what's best for your specific body or your prakriti, your constitution, what's going to be best for your body and how your body is going to best process that. Because you can have like X number of calories that you're supposed to intake. You hit all these markers, but you can't digest it. Like that's not helpful. And if you're eating food that's been sitting in your fridge for 3 days, like that's also not going to be great for your body, but you hit that caloric intake. So there's so much more to consider with it. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was about the gunas, which is the Sanskrit term kind of translated loosely into qualities. So there's kind of overall qualities of our food. So we talked about this in a previous episode that like raw fruits and veggies are sattvic. They're like full of prana. You go out, you know, I'm in Washington now, you go out and pick an apple, like you eat it, that is like full of prana. It's not an apple that's been processed, that's been delivered from other out of states or out of the country. It's like very fresh from the tree. It's fresh from the source. There's other foods that are very rajasic or very like action that can get you like agitated. And then there's foods that are tamasic that are heavy and dull. And like when foods have been in the fridge and the freezer for a long time, you get more of that tamasic, that like dullness that just drags the food down and that causes more heaviness in the physical body and your digestion, but also in the mind. And that's just not great. Like you don't want to have a ton of tamasic energy from that. And then I thought it would be cool to talk through like freezing foods and microwaving foods because this is always like, it's so strange to like not have a microwave or to like not use the freezer. But freezing foods, and this is something that I definitely have done for myself, both where I've like made a giant pot of chili or something like that in the winter. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to eat all of this. So then I freeze it. But what happens when we freeze our food is that the like water in our food or the liquid in our food becomes ice too, right? And ice has a bigger volume than water, and then there's like all the science with like the bonds that happen with the food molecules, and those are broken and damaged. And so the consciousness, this idea of prana or like the life force in our food is shifted and it's just not as vital. It's diluted. It's not what it was when we first made it. Microwaving, like microwaves like freak me out now. So like I don't like I would rather freeze something over microwaving it. But microwaves also change the nature of our food. They change the prana and the consciousness, and that also has a direct impact on us. So just like freezing, the bonds are broken in the molecules in our food, which then impacts how our body can or can't process or then intake all of the good prana from the food and then translate that into the food products in our bodies. So I think it's super interesting to look at those and to, I think there's something to be said for like the convenience factor of being able to microwave something over like reheating something in your stove or like a little oven. It might take a little bit longer. You're in an office building and the only thing you have is a microwave. So we get all of that, all things in moderation. But Ashwini, what's your verdict here? Is fact versus fiction? Is meal prepping Ayurvedic? What do you think?
Yes, like you said, sarva karmeshu madhyamam. Do everything in moderation all the time. The verdict is be practical. The ideal may not be practical for you. Cooking meal every day may not be practical for you, but be practical and do what's best for you. Ayurveda never gives a blanket statement. You cannot micromanage people's lives. So it always gives what is best and fresh food, cooked whole foods, and avoid processed food, and try to avoid old food in general. But we have to find a balance between what is ideal and what is possible in the constant in our everyday life. This will be unique for each person. Like for me, it's gonna be like once a day cooking food. For another person, they're gonna cook 3 times a day. For someone else, it's like cooking like once in 2 days. So find out what's good for you and try to do that, but at least find some time. My humble request is find some time to cook your food, which gives you enough energy, and it changed my life in general. Like I went to California for a week, and I was eating a lot of food which was takeouts, and like in general I was like eating. I could sense it. Like when I came back, I could sense like how much my body is very. It's not grounded. It's very vata aggravated, and like I took 1 week or so to get back into my routine and start cooking for myself. And that's when like my dreams were really like very vata aggravated dreams. I could dream like everything. I calmed down after cooking myself. So it happened time and time again that I could see a difference now, that what happens to my body when I go outside and eat versus what happens to my body when I cook for myself. It's something very simple. It doesn't have to be like a gourmet meal. Just make sure something, so rice and beans, rice and lentils in general, is what helped me to gain my health and my health back. Because going to ER, which I went a lot of times, is more expensive than spending some time cooking for meals for myself. That's the only reason I'm always for home cooked meal in general. I would
Mhm.
cook for myself. The reason I cook for myself is this reason every day. But some people, yes, I understand, may not be able to do that. And for them, I would recommend using fridge, freezer appropriately and maintain the food in the best quality possible. I would say don't keep more than probably 3 to 4 days. That's like stretching it, but 3 to 4 days is the max you want to keep something in the fridge or freezer. I would say 2 days max. 2 days, keep it in the fridge and use it. That's what I think. And pack your food when you go outside. That's I do that all the time. I don't have any shame in packing my foods wherever I go and like eating it. I'm not buying anything there, and
Hmm.
that's all I do, and that's what have made 10 times better in my health. And that's what I do. Try to heat up the food in the stove instead of microwave, like Kate was saying. Microwave, I don't think I use microwave a lot. In general, it's just there for the decoration now. But cooking on the stove is completely easy. It's if you want to reheat something, cooking on the stove is so easy. If you have like a thick stainless steel pot, it's like it takes the same time as doing it in a microwave. So that's microwave is becoming more and more optional for me now. What do you think, Kate?
Yeah. Um, I had that same experience in California. I think we talked about this off the podcast, but like my dreams were so off. And they say in our classes that like your dreams are a reflection of your digestion. And I was like, yes, because I was digesting all kinds of things, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so interesting because now that we've been in the program for almost a year. And so we've been able to really like experiment and implement a lot of these different practices. And for me, it's pretty subtle, but because I don't necessarily think that I make any like really fancy meals. Like I just said, I don't really follow recipes, but I feel so much better when I'm able to cook those meals for myself. Or when I'm cooking with my partner, he cooks, because it's like you're like making it live and you're doing it together. You like know where the food came from. Like there's all of that stuff. So um, anyway, we talked about this, and you said the shloka for me again, like all things in moderation. So if it's reasonable for somebody to cook 3 meals a day like it is for us, perfect. Like give that a go. If it's reasonable for you to cook 1 meal for yourself in a day, or 1 meal for the week, like whatever it is, like find your starting point and just start to like gather some data and see how that works for you. So trying to go from like one extreme where you eat out for the majority of your meals to like trying to cook every single meal, like that's not going to be successful. We want you to be successful. And another way is like, if you only have the microwave to heat your meal up, like use the microwave, it'll be okay. We have Ashwini has like a little, what was the little guy that you had? Not your thermos, but the other thing.
Itaki pot.
Itaki pot. Jeff just got one, and it's like so cool and like
Yeah.
so useful.
Yes. It's
Yeah. Will
my
you talk a
favorite.
little bit about it?
Yeah, it's like a crock pot, but you can cook food inside. Like it's like a lunch kind of size, and you can carry it around everywhere you go. I saw some videos about it on YouTube, and I fell in love with it because I want to cook my rice wherever I go. And it
Yes.
does it so perfectly. So I love that. Yeah. You just can plug it in even when you're going on like a car, and you can plug it in, and I love that too.
Yeah, that's so nice. So I have a little baby rice cooker. And when I was working the 9 to 5, I would bring it. I had a bigger one, but I would bring in the rice cooker that had like a little steam basket.
Mm.
And so I would cut up my veggies like in the morning or the night before, but I would bring my rice and lentils to the office,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd have them soaking. And then I would cook those and throw in my veggies. And I had like a fresh cooked lunch meal when I would remember to do that.
Yeah.
And it was so much better than like eating out or trying to eat a sandwich, or I already talked about like eating the salads when I was thought I was being really healthy. But yeah, there's different ways that you can do that I think are affordable, that will help you feel really good,
Mm-hmm.
too. So I think that like you talked about, like the ways of being more strategic and getting your groceries and understanding like, okay, these are the grains, these are the veggies that I want to eat, they're in season or whatever, and just being really strategic, and then having like different spice combinations, so that you don't get the same tastes or like the same consistencies all the time, because I think that can be a hard thing for people too.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would question whether it is actually saving time to like bulk prep everything on a Sunday, and then you're still using the microwave, versus quick reheating it up on the stove. That's what I do. Or if it's something like a pizza or something, I eat pizza sometimes, that goes into like the oven, like that can be a quicker, another option too. But yeah, I just think it's interesting, like thinking about the impact on your health right now, and then long term, if you do spend a little bit more time cooking for yourself. So what do we do with this information, Ashwini? Kind of what's our takeaway with this?
Thank you so much for explaining that, Kate. Yes, the takeaway is do as much as possible. Cooking for yourself is always better idea because what you cook with love and affection for your family will get them 10 times the health and wellness. And meal prepping in general, I don't think like, and I don't know, like, I feel like a lot of people will agree with me. Meal prepping, like after a third day or a fourth day, if you want to eat the same thing, you don't want to eat that anymore. It just becomes too much to eat the same thing on over and over again. The best way is to make sure you have like 30 minutes. 30 minutes is more than enough. Or like if you want to prepare like amazing meal, probably 1 hour is the most time. 1 hour in your 24-hour cycle is the most time you want for cooking your meal. So I would highly recommend that. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Episode 10, Fact versus Fiction, Part 3. As a reminder, our aim is to provide educational content and share a bit of about our journey into Ayurveda. Check out our Instagram and TikTok below. For more info about Fact versus Fiction this week, we will be back soon with another episode on this series and more. As a reminder, what we share is not meant to replace care you seek medical alternative or otherwise provider. You know what is best for your body and your own. We will see you again soon in Journey into Ayurveda. Please like, share, and subscribe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.